The rain was coming down hard, the kind of heavy storm that drowns out every other sound. Wipers thudded back and forth across the windshield of the old pickup truck, but the road ahead was still nothing but blurred gray streaks. Inside, 5 friends sat cramped together, damp from the storm and exhausted from a long day of traveling. They weren't supposed to be here, driving down a narrow rural road in the middle of nowhere. Their plan had been to take the highway back into town, but a fallen tree had blocked their path. Now, with no GPS signal and the rain washing away the dirt road beneath their wheels, they were lost. "Keep driving straight," Jake said from the passenger seat, his eyes squinting at the faint beams of the headlights cutting through the storm. "There's got to be something ahead. A motel, a diner, anything." In the back seat, Lisa hugged herself against the cold. Or nothing. "This feels like the middle of nowhere. What if we run out of gas?" Nobody answered. The tension in the truck was thick. Then, through the sheets of rain, they saw it. A house. It stood alone in the middle of a field, 2 stories tall, its outline lit faintly by a flash of lightning. The wood looked old, weathered, abandoned, but it was shelter. "Pull over," Sarah said. "We can wait out the storm there." No one argued. The driver turned down the dirt path leading up to the farmhouse, and soon they were piling out, boots sinking into the wet ground. The air smelled of soil, damp wood, and something else. Something faint, like iron. Inside, the house creaked as the door swung open. The floorboards groaned beneath their weight. The wallpaper peeled from the walls, and the air was thick with dust. But it was dry, and that was enough. They decided to stay until morning. But morning never came. At first, it was the noises outside. The storm had eased, but in the silence they heard something else. Low, dragging sounds in the wet soil. At first, they thought it was animals, maybe deer wandering near the fields. But then came the knocking. A soft, deliberate thud against the side of the house. They froze. "What was that?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. "Probably the wind," Jake muttered, though his own voice lacked conviction. Then came another sound, scraping like fingernails against wood. One of the windows rattled, and then a face appeared. It pressed against the glass, pale and colorless, with wide, milky eyes that stared blankly into the room. Its lips pulled back, revealing bloodstained teeth. Sarah screamed. The face vanished, only to be replaced by another, and another. Soon every window on the first floor was surrounded. Figures dragged themselves out of the rain-soaked fields, their clothes torn, their skin gray and rotting. They weren't people. They were something else. Panic erupted inside the farmhouse. Jake grabbed a chair and shoved it beneath the doorknob. Sarah and Lisa began dragging old furniture in front of the windows. The others shouted, argued, tripped over one another in the chaos. The banging grew louder. Fists slammed against the glass, fingers clawed at the wooden frames. The house shuddered with the weight of them pressing in. "What the hell are they?" Lisa cried, tears streaming down her face. "They're not alive," Sarah whispered, her voice hollow. "They can't be alive." The creatures groaned, guttural and inhuman, a chorus of hunger and rage. One window shattered, spraying shards of glass across the floor. A gray hand shot through, grasping wildly until someone shoved a cabinet against it. "We can't stay down here," Jake shouted. "We have to go upstairs." They ran up the creaking staircase, slamming the door shut behind them. The second floor was just as decayed as the first. Dusty, broken furniture, torn curtains flapping in the wind from cracked windows. They barricaded themselves in a bedroom, huddled together in the dark. Outside, the storm had stopped, but the nightmare had just begun. The night dragged on. The creatures surrounded the farmhouse, their groans echoing across the fields. Every few minutes, something slammed against the door downstairs. The wooden beams groaned under the pressure. Inside the bedroom, fear turned into paranoia. "They'll break through eventually," Jake said, pacing the room. "We can't stay trapped up here. We have to make a run for it." "And go where?" Sarah snapped. "There's nothing for miles. We don't even know which way town is." Lisa sat trembling in the corner. "I just want to go home," she whispered. But then came the realization that froze them all. Tom, the quietest of the group, had been sitting by the window, silent, pale. When Jake looked closer, he saw the dark stain spreading across Tom's sleeve. "You're bleeding," Jake said. Tom shook his head. "It's nothing, just cut myself on the glass earlier." But when the sleeve slipped back, the truth was revealed. A jagged bite mark, deep into the flesh. Everyone stared in horror. "No," Sarah whispered. "No, no, no. It's not what you think," Tom shouted, panic in his voice. But his skin was already growing paler, sweat dripping down his forehead. His breathing grew shallow, ragged. They had all heard the stories. Maybe they never believed them. But now, looking at Tom, there was no denying it. He was changing. Fear split the group apart. Jake wanted to throw Tom out before he turned. Lisa begged them not to. Sarah grabbed a broken piece of wood, her hands trembling as she raised it like a weapon. Tom cried, begged, pleaded. "I'm still me. Please don't let me die like this." But his voice grew weaker. His eyes glazed over. His body shuddered. And then he went still. Silence filled the room, until his eyes snapped open. They weren't human anymore. What followed was chaos. Tom lunged, his mouth snapping open, teeth gnashing. The group screamed, scrambling for the door. Sarah struck him with the piece of wood, but he didn't stop. It took all of them together to shove him back, slam the door, and barricade it from the outside. Inside the room, Tom's growls grew louder, more savage. He slammed against the door again and again. The wood began to crack. They had no choice. They had to escape. Through another bedroom, they found a window leading to the roof. Jake pried it open, and one by one, they crawled out into the night. The roof was slick with rain, the tiles threatening to give way beneath their feet. Below, dozens of figures waited, staring up with lifeless eyes, their hands reaching toward the house. They moved carefully, inching across the roof toward the back. Their only hope was to jump down and run into the fields, hoping to lose the creatures in the dark. But as Lisa moved forward, her foot slipped. She screamed, sliding down the tiles. Jake grabbed her arm just in time, pulling her back. The noise, however, drew the creatures' attention. They surged forward, slamming themselves against the house harder than before. The walls shook. The farmhouse wasn't going to hold much longer. "Jump!" Jake shouted. They leapt from the roof, crashing into the wet grass below. Pain shot through their bodies, but there was no time to stop. They ran. Behind them, the farmhouse groaned. The barricaded door shattered, and with it, a flood of creatures poured inside. The night air was filled with their howls. They sprinted across the fields, the wet soil sucking at their shoes. Every step was agony, their lungs burning. But the creatures followed, relentless, unending. The trees ahead offered some cover. They crashed through the branches, ducking low, stumbling over roots. The groans grew fainter behind them, but never disappeared. Finally, they reached an old barn at the edge of the woods. Out of breath, they collapsed inside, slamming the door shut. The barn smelled of rot and mold, but for the moment, it was safety. Or so they thought. Because in the shadows of the barn, something moved. At first, they thought it was an animal, but as lightning flashed across the sky, they saw it. Another figure standing in the dark. Its face was twisted, half-rotted, its jaw hanging loosely from torn flesh. It stared at them with hollow eyes, and then began to move forward. And then another appeared. And another. The barn was already full of them. The last thing heard that night was the screaming. The field swallowed the sound. The storm clouds drifted. The farmhouse stood silent once again, its windows shattered, its walls scarred. By morning, the road was empty, as if nothing had happened. But for those who passed by, there was always the feeling, an emptiness in the air, a weight in the silence, as if the land itself remembered the night the dead walked.